Warning disclaimer. The following story is a fictional dramatization inspired by real-life emotional themes. It contains mature subject matter involving relationships, trust, and personal boundaries. All characters and events are entirely fictional. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. This content is created solely for entertainment purposes and is not intended to promote or justify any inappropriate behavior. Viewer discretion is advised. Emily had always been the dependable one, the kind of friend you could call in the middle of the night and she'd show up without hesitation. So, when her childhood best friend Lisa asked for a favor, Emily didn't think twice. Lisa's 21-year-old son, Jordan, had landed a summer internship in the city where Emily lived, and his temporary housing had fallen through at the last minute. Lisa was desperate. "Just a few weeks," she had said. "He's a good kid. Polite, quiet, focused on work. You won't even notice he's there." Emily, recently divorced and living alone in her 2-bedroom apartment, agreed without hesitation. She had known Jordan since he was a boy, used to bring him gifts on his birthdays, even babysat him once when he was 7. The idea of hosting him felt harmless, even comforting, like a way to fill the quiet in her life. Jordan arrived with a modest suitcase and a shy smile. He had grown, taller, broader, more confident than she remembered. He still had those same gentle eyes, but there was a maturity to him now that Emily couldn't ignore. The first few days were smooth. He kept to himself, made his own meals, and spent most of his time either at work or studying. Emily admired his independence. They crossed paths mostly in the evenings, exchanging polite conversations over coffee or a shared meal. But something began to shift quietly, like a breeze sneaking through a half-open window. One night, they watched a documentary together on the couch, something they both stumbled into casually. Jordan laughed at her sarcastic commentary, and she found herself laughing with him in a way she hadn't in months. That night, she lay in bed thinking, not about her ex-husband, or work, or even Lisa, but about the comfort of Jordan's company. Felt strange, and she brushed it off quickly. Days turned into a week, and their rhythm started to feel natural. Jordan began cooking dinner occasionally as a way to thank her. He asked her about her job, her hobbies, her past. He listened, really listened, in a way Emily wasn't used to anymore. And though she didn't say it out loud, she began looking forward to those small conversations with a boy who wasn't really a boy anymore. To Emily, it was still just kindness, a favor for a friend. She had no intentions, no thoughts that crossed any inappropriate lines. But deep down, beneath the comfort and the familiarity, something was starting to breathe, quiet and slow like a spark waiting for oxygen. She couldn't see it yet, but it was there. It started with the kitchen light. Emily had gotten used to Jordan being quiet in the evenings. He'd usually retreat to his room after dinner to finish work or scroll through his phone. But one night, around 11 p.m., she walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water and found him sitting there, headphones off, staring out the window. The city lights reflected in his eyes. "Can't sleep?" she asked. He shook his head with a small smile. "Just thinking, I guess." That moment turned into an hour-long conversation. Nothing serious, just casual things. Music shows how the city felt different from the suburbs. He told her about his internship, the long hours, the impersonal office. She talked about her marketing job and how empty the apartment had felt since her divorce. Jordan listened with a kind of attentiveness that was rare in someone his age. He wasn't distracted, wasn't looking at his phone. His focus was fully on her. Emily hadn't had a conversation like that in a long time, not one that felt so effortless. The next night, the same thing happened. Then the next. Their late-night talks became routine, an unspoken tradition. Jordan would make chamomile tea, Emily would sit at the counter in her robe, and they would talk. Sometimes they laughed until their sides hurt. Other nights, they spoke softly about life's disappointments. His strained relationship with his mother, her fears about growing older and being alone. These weren't surface-level exchanges. They were real, raw, and dangerously comforting. One night, he played a song on his phone, some indie artist Emily had never heard of. The lyrics were soft and emotional. And as they sat there listening, she realized how easy it had become to open up to him. She felt seen. Not as someone's mom friend or the woman going through a divorce, but as a woman, person, with thoughts, stories, and desires she hadn't let herself feel in years. She started noticing little things. The way he looked at her when she spoke, how he remembered small details from their conversations, how his compliments felt more intentional lately. Less like something a polite guest would say, and more like something a man says when he notices a woman. Still, she told herself it was nothing. Jordan was just being kind, respectful, maybe even a little lonely himself. After all, he didn't have friends in the city yet. And maybe she, too, was just responding to the attention because it felt good. For the first time in a long time. But deep in the quiet space between midnight and morning, something was shifting. Their connection was becoming layered, charged. They both felt it, though neither dared speak it. The air between them was still, but heavy with something unspoken. And Emily, despite her better judgment, didn't want it to stop. It wasn't a single moment that changed things between them. It was the buildup of many small ones, each one subtle enough to ignore on its own but impossible to overlook when added together. One evening, Emily came home from a stressful day at work. Jordan was already in the kitchen, cooking. "I thought I'd make dinner tonight," he said, smiling warmly. "You looked tired yesterday." It wasn't the act of cooking that caught her off guard. It was his thoughtfulness, the way he noticed her without her having to say anything. As they sat down to eat, she caught herself watching the way his jaw moved as he chewed, the way he laughed mid-bite when she told a funny story. It wasn't just maternal fondness anymore. It was something else, something she wasn't ready to name. The shift continued in small, almost imperceptible ways. Jordan began complimenting her more often. On her dress, her perfume, the way she wore her hair that day. At first, Emily blushed and brushed them off, telling herself he was just being polite. But his eyes didn't lie. There was a softness in them when he looked at her, a warmth that lingered just a little too long. One night, as they watched a movie on the couch, their hands brushed when reaching for the popcorn. Neither of them moved away immediately. His pinky finger rested lightly against hers for a moment longer than it should have. Emily pretended not to notice, but her heart raced. She excused herself early that night, locked herself in her room, and stared at the ceiling, asking herself what was happening. She began to notice the way her own behavior was changing. She took a little more time getting ready in the morning, wore perfume even if she wasn't going anywhere, and chose her outfits more carefully, even though no one else was around to see them. She tried to justify it as self-care, reclaiming confidence after the divorce. But deep down, she knew it had something to do with Jordan. It frightened her, not just because of what it might mean to Lisa, but because of what it meant about herself. She had spent so long being the responsible one, the one who didn't act on impulse, who made sacrifices for others. Now, here she was, growing feelings for someone she had watched grow up, someone who was still figuring out who he was. And yet, for all her guilt and confusion, she couldn't stop it. She didn't want to. Every time he looked at her like she mattered, like he truly saw her, it chipped away at the wall she had built around her heart. By now, they both knew something had changed, but neither of them had the courage to say it out loud. It was a Thursday evening when the lines truly began to blur, and Emily could no longer pretend that what was happening between her and Jordan was innocent. The tension had been simmering for days, soft and slow, like water just about to boil. And that night, it finally reached the edge. Emily had gotten home late from work, emotionally drained after back-to-back meetings. As she kicked off her shoes, she heard soft music playing from the living room. Jordan had dimmed the lights, lit a candle or two, and prepared dinner again, this time pasta with a red wine he had picked up earlier. "You deserve to relax," he said, smiling that quiet, thoughtful smile she had come to crave. "Sit. Let me take care of it tonight." She hesitated, but sat. They ate slowly, talking about anything but what was really happening. The silence between topics wasn't awkward, it was charged. It was like both of them knew the undercurrent was too strong to acknowledge, and if they gave it words, everything would spiral. After dinner, Jordan suggested they watch a show, and she agreed, though her stomach was already turning with anticipation. As they settled onto the couch, their bodies closer than usual, Emily felt the gravity shift. His thigh brushed against hers, and neither of them moved. When he passed her the wine glass, their fingers touched. His grip soft, his eyes steady. That's when it happened. A pause in conversation. A silence filled with meaning. And then Jordan reached out. Not suddenly, not forcefully, but carefully, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered near her jawline. She looked at him, searching for something to say, but her breath caught in her throat. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I know I shouldn't." But he didn't pull away, and Emily didn't stop him. She knew in that moment she could. She could remind him of the lines, the expectations, the friendship she had with his mother, the difference in their ages, the risk, the consequences. But instead, she stayed still, frozen not in fear, but in something dangerously close to longing. The moment was broken only when she abruptly stood up and muttered something about needing to check her phone. She went to her room, closed the door, and sat on the edge of her bed, heart pounding like a drum. What just happened? She asked herself. What were they doing? She knew it was wrong, or at least complicated. But her feelings didn't feel wrong. In fact, they felt more real than anything had in years. There was something honest, unfiltered about the connection. But honesty didn't make it right, and that terrified her. From the other side of the door, she could still hear the music playing. Soft, slow, intimate. The lines between friendship, loyalty, attraction, and morality had begun to fade. And once they blurred, they were almost impossible to redraw. It was raining that night, a slow, steady kind of rain that made the city feel quieter, like the world had been put on pause. Emily stood by the window in her robe, holding a mug of tea that had long gone cold. She had spent the whole day avoiding Jordan, ducking out early for work, coming home late, skipping dinner. But avoidance didn't dissolve tension. It only made it thicker, heavier, more suffocating. Around 10 p.m., there was a soft knock on her bedroom door. She didn't respond. A few seconds later, Jordan's voice came through, low, hesitant. "Emily, are you okay?" She opened the door halfway. He stood there, barefoot, in a plain t-shirt and joggers, looking both nervous and sincere. His hair was still damp from a shower, and he smelled faintly of soap and something earthy. "I didn't mean to cross a line the other night," he said, eyes cast downward. I don't know what this is, but I think about you more than I should." Her heart skipped. She should have stopped him then, said something rational, mature, responsible. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped aside. "Come in." They sat on opposite ends of the bed, an invisible tension thick between them. The room felt smaller, the rain outside louder. He looked at her like he was trying to read her mind, like he was afraid of breaking something fragile. "I feel like I know you better than anyone else here," he said quietly. "You listen. You care. You don't treat me like a kid." His voice cracked just slightly. "I know you're older. I know this is complicated. But I don't care." Emily closed her eyes. Her pulse thudded in her ears. "Jordan, this isn't supposed to happen. This isn't okay." "But it is happening," he whispered. "And I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know." Then there was silence. Only the sound of rain tapping the glass, and two hearts beating far too loudly in a room too quiet. And then he reached for her hand. It was a small gesture, a simple one, but it was the spark. Her fingers curled into his instinctively. Their eyes met, no words left to speak. And in the next second, they were kissing, soft at first, almost unsure, then deeper, desperate, like all the tension of the past weeks had come to a breaking point. They didn't stop. They couldn't. It wasn't planned or romantic or even logical. It was raw, emotional, impulsive. A release of everything they had been holding back. And when it was over, Emily lay in silence, her back turned to him, tears in her eyes. Not from regret, but from the weight of knowing nothing could ever go back to how it was. The moment everything changed didn't come with fireworks or drama. It came with a whisper, a touch, and a choice they both made in a moment of weakness. A moment that would haunt them both. The morning light was too bright. Emily lay awake in bed long before the sun rose, staring at the ceiling with a weight in her chest that pressed deeper than guilt. It was the realization that a line had been crossed, and no matter how much she wanted to, there was no way to uncross it. She could still feel the warmth of Jordan's hand lingering on her skin, the way he had whispered her name like it meant something sacred. But now, in the cold clarity of morning, it all felt like a dream she shouldn't have allowed herself to enter. She got up quietly, wrapped herself in a robe, and walked to the kitchen. Jordan was already there, making coffee. He turned to her with a look that wasn't regretful. It was tender, filled with something dangerously close to hope. "Morning," he said gently. "I was just about to bring you a cup." Emily's heart clenched. "We need to talk," she replied. They sat at the kitchen table, but this time there were no jokes, no soft smiles. Just silence, broken only by the occasional clink of a spoon against ceramic. Emily tried to find the right words, ones that didn't sound cold but still created distance. "What happened last night? It can't happen again, Jordan. It shouldn't have happened at all." He nodded slowly, but his eyes didn't leave hers. "I know. I don't regret it. I don't think you do either." That was the hardest part. She didn't. In the moment it had felt real, warm, safe even. But it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't right. Not because of the age gap or the fear of being judged, but because of what it would mean if Lisa ever found out. Her best friend. A woman who trusted her with the one thing she valued most, her son. The next few days became an emotional tightrope. Emily tried to keep things normal, wake up, work, smile, breathe. Jordan did the same. They both acted as though nothing had happened, but the silence between them grew louder. Every glance felt heavier. Every brush of a shoulder in the hallway made her chest ache. And behind it all was the looming, unbearable knowledge that they were keeping a secret from someone who had never deserved betrayal. Lisa called often to check on Jordan. Emily would force a smile and say, "He's doing great, settling in just fine." The guilt wrapped tighter around her throat with each word. At night, she would lie in bed, wondering if this was how people lose themselves. Not with big, obvious choices, but with 1,000 small decisions they make while convincing themselves it's just temporary. Just one mistake. Just one night. But the truth was, something deeper had been awakened in her. A need to feel loved. To feel seen. Jordan tried to talk to her more than once. "We don't have to pretend," he said one night. "I care about you. I'm not letting it go that easily." But Emily couldn't respond. She was too afraid. Of her feelings, of judgment, of losing everything. So they buried it. The night they shared the words they didn't say. They buried it deep, hoping it would stay hidden. But secrets, no matter how carefully buried, have a way of rising. It was a Sunday afternoon when everything began to unravel. Emily was in the middle of folding laundry when she heard the front door open, followed by a familiar voice she hadn't expected to hear for another 2 weeks. "Surprise!" Lisa called out cheerfully. "I finished my business trip early. Figured I'd come see my boy before heading home." Emily froze, a towel clutched in her hands. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Lisa was here, unannounced, just feet away. Her best friend. The one who had trusted her with everything. And now everything was at risk of falling apart. Jordan appeared from his room a few seconds later, his face pale, caught equally off guard. "Mom," he stammered. "You didn't say you were coming." Lisa wrapped him in a hug, beaming. "Wanted to surprise you." And Emily, "Oh, I missed you too." She reached in for an embrace, and Emily forced a smile, her body stiff as stone. The hug felt like punishment. Over the next hour, Lisa chatted nonstop. About her trip, her coworkers, how proud she was of Jordan. Emily nodded and laughed at the right places, but inside, she was unraveling. Every shared glance with Jordan was laced with dread. Every innocent comment from Lisa felt like a knife twisting in Emily's gut. Later that evening, Lisa left her phone charging in the kitchen and stepped into the shower. Emily moved to check her own messages when a notification on Lisa's phone lit up the screen. A name she recognized, Jordan. Followed by a preview of the message, "I miss the way you held me that night." Emily's breath hitched. She didn't touch the phone. But she didn't have to. Lisa would see it eventually. It was already too late. And she did. 20 minutes later, a storm erupted in the living room. Lisa's face was flushed with confusion and disbelief. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, phone shaking in her hand. "Jordan? Emily? Is this some kind of joke?" Jordan opened his mouth, but no words came. Emily tried to speak, to explain, to soften the blow, but there was no soft way to say it. No way to unmake what had been done. "I trusted you," Lisa screamed at Emily. "You were like a sister to me. You helped raise him. How could you do this to me?" The betrayal in her voice shattered something inside Emily. Jordan tried to defend her. "Mom, it wasn't her fault. It wasn't like that. It wasn't just some fling." But Lisa wouldn't hear it. "Don't. Just don't. I don't even know who either of you are anymore." She left that night, tears streaking her face, slamming the door behind her. Jordan sat on the couch, defeated. Emily stood by the kitchen counter, hands trembling. There were no more secrets now, just the damage they had left behind. A friendship destroyed, a mother's heart broken, and a house no longer filled with warmth, but silence. The silence that followed Lisa's departure was deafening. For the first time since Jordan had moved in, the apartment felt like a cold, unfamiliar space. Every corner, every room, every object now held the weight of what had happened. Emily couldn't walk into the living room without seeing Lisa's face. Betrayed, furious, devastated. She couldn't sit at the kitchen table without hearing the echo of Jordan's confession. The entire space felt haunted by choices that could no longer be undone. In the days that followed, Emily and Jordan barely spoke. He stayed in his room, only emerging for food or brief check-ins. She gave him space, not out of punishment, but because she herself didn't know how to face him or what to say. Her emotions were a tangle of regret, longing, shame, and confusion. There had been something real between them. That much she knew. But real didn't mean right, and it certainly didn't mean harmless. Late one night, Jordan sat beside her on the couch where it had all started. He looked tired, his eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not for what I felt, but for what it caused. I never meant to hurt her. I never meant to hurt you." Emily nodded, her throat tight. "I know," she whispered, "but we did. And now we have to live with that." He reached for her hand again, just like he did that night. But this time, she gently pulled away. "We can't go back," she said, voice trembling. "And we can't move forward, not like this. I don't think I even know who I am anymore. I need to figure that out. Alone." Jordan nodded slowly, pain flashing through his eyes. "I get it." The next morning, he packed his things and left. No dramatic goodbye, no desperate plea. Just a quiet understanding between two people who had shared something too complicated for the world to accept. Emily stood by the window as he walked away, his figure growing smaller with every step. A part of her wanted to call him back, to hold on to what they had, because it had felt real, maybe even beautiful in its own broken way. But another part knew this was the only path that offered even a chance at healing. For herself, for Lisa, even for Jordan. Weeks turned into months. Lisa never called. The silence between them stretched wide and painful. Emily sent a letter once, an apology that may never be answered. But it was honest. And sometimes that's all we can offer. In time, Emily started rebuilding her life. Slowly, quietly, not by forgetting what had happened, but by accepting it, by learning from it. Because sometimes, love comes at the wrong time, in the wrong form, wrapped in longing and pain. And sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let it go. Not because it wasn't real, but because it wasn't meant to stay.